to another episode of the Charlie and Andrei podcast. Today we have a special guest. Paul Shepard is joining us. We're going to be talking about Oscar Wilde and different aspects of his life and different aspects of his art, specifically his writing that we have encountered. We all kind of have a little niche of what we're familiar with. And I think this will be a really fun exploration. We're doing this the day before Thanksgiving when we're recording, so it's kind of has a festive feel to it. I'm going to talk about some plays that I like. Andre and Paul are going to talk about Oscar Wilde's life in a little bit of detail, as well as the writings that they've read. And I think we're just going to go from there. So, Andre, do you want to start us off, get us going?
Sure. So yeah, like I said, we have a special guest today. Paul's a old friend of ours. He went to Bard College. He has a background in journalism and literature and poetry. So yeah, he's pretty well versed in this kind of thing. And uh, you know, Oscar Wilde's one of his favorite writers and playwrights. He was a very influential man of the late Victorian era, as we all know. He was involved in his fair share of scandals, but he really produced some pretty amazing works. One of my favorite being Picture of Dorian Gray, and of course, The Importance of Being Earnest. And then we'll also be discussing the aesthetic kind of movement and the idea of arts for art's sake, which I'm sure Paul will go into. So, without further ado, Paul, you want to take it away?
Sure. Um, Oscar Wilde, tremendously important. Um, Remembered for his absolutely breathtaking command of English. His beautiful stories that really pertain as much to our own sensibility as they did in his day, and really kind of draw from the eternal. Um, and also uh, a martyr for sort of the trials. Sorry, my cats are fighting. Give me a second.
Uh, no problem.
Guys!
Well, I feel like this should be in an Oscar Wilde play. It's like, excuse me, I'm having this beautiful discussion of the eternal platonic forms, but my cats are fighting.
Well, I
I
have
love
one cat who's nice. The other one's a bully.
That's
it.
always how it is, isn't it?
I feel like this
Uh,
this is straight out of one of like the importance of being
One of his
earnest or
plays.
something. But
but anyway, he's a lot of people remember him for as like a martyr for the LGBT identity because he was sentenced to 3 years of hard labor for gross indecency at a very
Mhm.
interesting and kind of complicated trial. And the Although I'll say that two of my favorite works of his actually came from that. One being a long letter from prison, which, in my opinion, is the most beautiful thing, well, in my experience, that has ever been written. It's called De Profundis, and the other is the Ballad of Reading Jail, which is that could certainly be set to music. It's a sort of like a ballad, obviously, but it's about a murderer who's sentenced to hang. And the thing is, when he first published it, he used it as a pseudonym C33, which was his cell. And
Mhm.
then it was very, very popular and was after its seventh printing in 2 years, he finally started putting his own name on it. But De Profundis was published posthumously, and A Reading Jail was published in the very last years of his life. He died of meningitis in 1900.
Oh, sad.
It is sad. And a lot of his work too was really just in that last decade. A lot of his most famous and important things. I took some notes here. Let me just, for example, the plays that you like, Charlie,
uh,
those were written in, uh, one second.
Ideal Husband is 1895, and The Importance of Being Earnest is I think also 1895.
Yeah, they were both, yeah, running
Yeah.
in 1895.
And that's not, they consider it sort of the height of his fame is when those were being played and when
And that was when he was,
Magnum
and
opus.
they were still being performed when he was, got in legal trouble. Um, and that's an interesting how that started was kind of interesting. But since we spoke about these two plays, maybe you should talk about them first before we talk about how his life was ruined at the height of his popularity.
Yeah, I mean, I could like summarize the the two stories just briefly. I will say I'm not as familiar with Oscar Wilde's life. So if there are details, maybe if you want to chip in that maybe give some, more color to the situation in the plays, that would help. The importance of being earnest, I mean, does kind of it's noted they have like parallel lives, the characters, and it's a comedy. It's a very like kind of fun, fluffy, light comedy. I loved it. I saw it when I was a teenager several times, and I've seen I think two movie adaptations of it. It's a lot of fun. And there's two protagonists, so to speak. There's Algernon and Jack, and both of them make like characters that help them escape from social obligations. So Algernon creates
Mm-hmm.
this. He invents this friend named Bunbury. And he's like, I must go see my friend Bunbury. He's a terrible invalid in the country. And he's like, oh, so he doesn't have to hang out with his aunt or something. And
Mhm.
it's just kind of hilarious because it's like, oh, I don't need to go. I'm going to go Bunburying. And then Jack has this other kind of persona. It's not another person that he created. Remember, Bunbury isn't real. He's fake Ernest. And he's like, I'm Ernest in the countryside, so I can just like I can be like immoral in the countryside. Now it doesn't get like overtly sexual or anything, but I think it kind of talks about I mean, I think if the most obvious interpretation of this is that like Victorian society puts a lot of pressures on you,
Mhm.
and you need to conform to these pressures, and so therefore they're kind of creating this uh they're creating this like alternative persona. I keep on using the word persona as if this is like a 1960s Swedish film or something, but it's just it's interesting because that's I think it makes sense.
Hey,
And
things are
given I don't know if you want to say anything on this. I mean, it's certainly Oscar Wilde himself must have had, a double life in some sense in like
oh, absolutely.
Victorian society.
And actually, after he left prison, he went under an assumed name because of he was so ashamed. It was Sebastian Melmoth.
Huh.
Was what he went by.
Is there an origin for why he picked that name? It's kind of a cool name.
There is. He identified with Saint Sebastian. Pierced with
Ah,
arrows and stuff.
right,
Um,
right. The martyr, right.
yeah, and Melmoth was a character in a famous Gothic novel that his great uncle wrote called Melmoth the Wanderer,
Um,
which was about this kind of cursed, this kind of Faustian deal where Melmoth trades his soul so he can live 150 years, but spends his time wandering to try to convince somebody else to take the deal.
Hmm.
well, reminiscent of the Wandering Jew, I
Yeah,
suppose.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's why he
Interesting.
chose that name. And also, then of course, before his trial, obviously to um, uh, engage, I mean, he had like boyfriends and stuff, um, and kind of
Right.
a extramarital at that time, like illegal sex life that was totally separate from his wife and children, whom he also loved dearly. And
So he
we
was he
never
was
saw
bi
that.
at the end of the day. He wasn't.
He was in love with beauty. What do you
Right.
call that? Like an astrophile,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, fair enough. I didn't know that about Melmoth the Wanderer and Saint Sebastian, but I think it's cool sometimes when people come up with alternative names to kind of try to excavate what the archaeology, so to speak, of their thinking is. But I'll briefly summarize Ideal Husband. And so Ideal Husband is actually more like political satire. I've seen it again. I think two movies and performed once. It's kind of a fun critique of like the British Parliament. And in the movies I've seen, they're frequently sitting in the British Parliament. One of my favorite lines I pulled up here was nobody ever speaks of politics at political parties. It would be extremely vulgar to do so. And when he's saying political parties, he's like at like the Tories party or something. He's at like a party of the Tories. So I've always had that kind of in the back of my mind, thinking, oh yeah, if I ever went to a political party, I'm guessing people probably won't be discussing politics. But as we've all lived in DC, that's not exactly the case.
No, it isn't.
But if only they could be as aesthetically aligned as Oscar Wilde's. And there's kind of this back plot in Ideal Husband of that the British are trying to build a canal through like southern Argentina and Chile through the Tierra del Fuego. It's just kind of a nonsense plot, but it's supposed to fight with the Americans over the Panama Canal.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's just another wonderful critique of British society, and ultimately the goal is like trying to help this one ideal politician find an ideal wife, and he's like an ideal husband, but he doesn't want to really do that, and
Mhm.
all the shenanigans that kind of go along with that. So that's just a brief
It sounds
synopsis,
funny.
kind of why I love that play.
Something funny is that did become famous for these like and like immensely popular at his time for these kind of these comedies. Um, when he his first play, as far as I know, was Salome.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Mm.
but that was what they call a closet drama. That is to be read instead of performed, because at the time it was illegal to perform like biblical themes on stage.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
and he wrote it. He actually wrote that in French and had his lover Lord Alfred Douglas translated in English.
Interesting.
But what's interesting is like just before Ideal Husband, Importance of Being Earnest, few years before, he wrote The Soul of Man Under Socialism, which is sort of like a political manifesto. And I say political in sort of the very most vaguest way. Um, but he devotes a lot of time talking about like art criticism. And he really has kind of this contempt for like public taste and and for like English drama in particular.
Hmm.
Um, and there's like a quote, for example, uh,
What was the name of this again?
oh, The Soul of Man Under Socialism.
The Soul of the Man Under Socialism.
I think I've heard of that,
Um,
but
Is he pro-socialism or against it?
yeah, he would call it. He says socialism or communism or whatever you call it. This is how he puts it.
Interesting.
But it's in service of this higher kind of individualism, as he puts it, with a capital I, which is actually here's this is very succinctly um, with the abolition of private property, then we shall have true, beautiful, healthy individualism. Nobody will waste his life in accumulating things and the symbols of things. One will live. To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist. That is all. Um,
huh. So he's like
oh,
against materialism and, you know,
but just
pursuit of wealth for.
what I was looking for in terms of like his regard for popular success, um, uh, an individual who has to make things for the use of others and with reference to their wants and their wishes does not work with interest and consequently cannot put into his work what is best for him. Whenever a government of any kind attempts to dictate to the artist what he is to do, art either entirely vanishes or becomes stereotyped or degenerates into a low and ignoble form of craft. Um, oh, this is actually what I was looking for. Sorry, here we go. The moment that an artist takes notice of what other people want and tries to supply that demand, he ceases to be an artist and becomes a dull or an amusing craftsman, an
Hmm.
honest or a dishonest craftsman. He has no further claim to be considered an artist.
Damn.
And he goes on to compare it to like, what if a scientist, when he was doing experiments, worried about what the public would think of his result?
Right.
Or if a philosopher, trying to seek truth, like worried about what the public was going to think. It's only sort of it's the artist who puts all of the meaning and all and like is can be sort of the sole judge of what he's creating.
So that's what it means by arts for art's sake. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you don't want to follow, whichever way the wind is of public opinion and interest is going. You do it out of your own experience and I guess
Yeah, I
hope
mean,
to get
I guess
something out of it.
the ideal would be that you make art that's eternal and it's not necessarily
Right.
specifically speaking to a specific generation. And I mean, obviously that's the case with Oscar Wilde. I mean, I think there was literature that we probably can't really name right now that was popular at that time, but it isn't popular now because it only spoke to the Victorian era as a period piece. And I think in this case, Wilde is kind of making eternal things. I mean, like the plays that I mentioned, of course, we'll get to Picture of Dorian Gray. I mean, they have sort of these eternal themes. I mean, certainly a Picture of Dorian Gray really speaks to very serious matters. I think that individuals face. Um, so I kind of like that. I mean, the idea and the hope is eternal beauty, right? But I guess time is the test of that. Um, But would you say that this was Paul, when you introduced this, the soul of the man under socialism, are you was is so would you say this is like a just like a political piece? You said it kind of in
No,
quotation.
it's not like the Communist Manifesto or something,
Right.
Right.
it's but it's sort of this, and it's very pie in the sky. And like a lot of and you can tell it's just really beautifully written creative nonfiction in a sense. But it's him. I mean, it starts out with him saying you see beggars, and when you give them charity, you're actually sustaining their um poverty, and that there should be like a better solution,
Mm.
and that lies in slavery of the machine, and freeing people as much as possible just to do what is not disagreeable, and to cultivate themselves. um it's
Yeah, one of my favorite philosophers, Slavoj Žižek, he's kind of has a similar contempt for individual charity. He says that I think it's in like in first as farce and then as something else. He says that it isn't. It should be the state that kind of gives charity. I guess I can see that sentiment directly echoed here, or reverse echo, I guess, because Zizek is post Wild. But
Do you
um
guys agree with that kind of outlook or philosophy toward charity? What do you think about
no, no. I mean, I
it?
agree that I think the state should give charity, but I mean, I think we as individuals have a like obligation to do that as well sometimes, and insofar as we can.
yeah.
But I get the point. I mean, if the point is like, it's like a Christmas Carol. If you read a Christmas Carol, he's like Scrooge is like, well, isn't aren't other institutions dealing with the poor? And it's like, no, yeah. I
Are
mean,
there no workhouses? Are there no prisons?
yes, exactly. You
Yeah.
know better than I do. Exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's like logically Scrooge makes a point, but it's not like an emotionally nice point.
Yeah.
True.
So.
That's actually a good segue to the Happy Prince, which is something that we all like. um Speaking of charity, and for those of your viewers who do either of you mind if I get into this now?
Yes,
Sure.
please do.
Yeah,
Please
please do.
summarize it. I think that would be great.
For any of your viewers who aren't aware, it's a story that could be summarized as this little swallow who doesn't go to Egypt with the other swallows. Instead, nests at the foot of this statue in the city, and it's this beautiful gilded statue with a ruby in the hilt of its sword, and sapphires for eyes. And the swallow thinks that it's raining, but instead it's the statue actually somehow crying. And the statue tells the swallow about how in life, because he was once, it's a statue of who was once the king of the prince of the city, right? And so the statue kind
Mm.
of remembers the life of the person it was sculpted to be, to represent.
Sure.
He lived in a palace where sorrow was not allowed to enter, um, and had this wonderfully innocent and happy life. But now that I'm looking down at my city, I can see all this suffering. So it kind of reminds you of Siddhartha a little bit.
Oh,
Um,
the Buddha.
yeah, exactly. And so he convinces the swallow to take the ruby from the hilt of his sword to this seamstress whose hands are all worn to the bone. Then convinces the swallow to take it was one of his eyes to this freezing playwright who's trying to finish his play. And the other one, his other eye goes to this little match girl whose father will beat her if she comes home with no money. And when the bird gives the sapphire to the little match girl, she says, "Oh, what a pretty piece of glass,"
Hmm.
foreshadowing what happens to the happy prince, which is that after that, the swallow he's blind now, so he relies on the swallow to tell him what the swallow sees, who in turn describes all of these wretched, poor people in the city. And so the statue convinces the swallow to pick flecks of gold off of the statue and give them to all the poor until the statue is quite dull and just no longer gilded or nice looking. And that's when winter comes, and that's when the bird dies. And the mayor of the city comes and says, "Oh, this statue has grown shabby, and there's a dead bird at its feet." Um, and so they decide to melt down the statue. And at the very end, when the workmen are putting it into are trying to melt it down, the leaden heart refuses to melt. So they take it
Mm.
and they throw it on the dust heap next to the dead swallow. And the very last lines of this story, I just have to read it in his own incomparable prose, um, are "Bring me the two most precious things in the city," said God to one of his angels. And the angel brought him the leaden heart and the dead bird. "You have rightly chosen," said God, "for in my garden of paradise this little bird shall sing forevermore, and in my city of gold the happy prince shall praise me."
Hmm.
I just want to point out too that you would say that has a moral lesson to it, right? Like that as a deeply moral dimension, which kind of
Say so, yeah.
it has a it kind of puts a twist on his conceit of art being of like in the beginning of Dorian Gray when he says art is neither moral or immoral, or this idea that art's for its own sake, only the artist can judge it as like beautiful or successful or not.
Right.
Art should not. It doesn't have a didactic purpose. It's not for like moral instruction.
Hmm. Hmm.
He There's some deep moral lessons contained in many of his stories, like that
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the true value of something isn't material, it's more it's moral, right? Like you said, I mean, yeah. And God thinks those are the most precious things, right?
one. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, and when he's telling the bird to bring all the gold flecks to the poor, he has the line, "For the poor always think that gold can make them happy."
right.
So it's like it's also suggesting that happipiness isn't found in that. Although if I were like a crippled beggar in Victorian England, I would appreciate some gold.
Yeah, let's be real. I mean,
I
You know,
mean,
I mean, I've heard
yeah.
that money does make you happy to a certain point. I've heard
to a certain
people.
point, yeah. What did
Yeah,
they say? It's like 75, 80K these days.
yeah,
Maybe 100 now
Adjusted
or
for
something.
inflation, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's enough to where you stop suffering and hungering as much. You fend off, those, problems and
Mhm.
account for basic necessities. But beyond that, I agree. Everything else that then is extra and
I mean, I think it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
right,
right?
right.
Once you get that base part of the pyramid, you start going towards like esteem and self-actualization, the eternal things like that are truly valuable. Again, like something that's of true value is moral, not material. So I think, that makes sense. Kind of a transcendent happiness
But a lot
won't.
of people, they're basically barking up the wrong tree when it comes to pursuing kind of millions because they think like having flashy things or experiences is enough to make up for those higher levels on the hierarchy of needs, which a lot
I
of
mean,
times they end up being pretty depressed when they realize it doesn't.
Yeah, I think they see those in power or who have wealth, like movie stars, and they try to mimic and have like a mimetic rivalry with them. Like, oh, let me get a
Right.
bunch of Louis
Yeah, that
Vuitton
makes
bags
sense.
or Gucci purses or shoes or something. And
Mimetic desire.
yeah, but that's another podcast.
Yeah, that's
René
another
Girard,
topic,
right?
but
Yeah.
the thing about so I mean, yeah, obviously Dorian Gray is influenced by, I'm sure some of his own life and his, this consistent theme of beauty and art and aesthetics. But in that case, in the case of Dorian, he became completely consumed by this superficial lust for, beauty and and power over others through that, and then of course that led to some wicked acts, murdering his the artist, and then the person who found out about it, his friend, and devolving in all manner of vices. And then of course the way he caused the woman, the actress who loved him, to basically commit suicide, that got him into trouble with her brother who wanted revenge. And then that's kind of like the main plot of the story. And then in the end, all of it ends up catching up with him, and he realizes the only thing he can do is try to repent and atone, and that ultimately cost him everything. But maybe it was the only way forward at that point. So I wonder how his own personal experiences kind of fed into that, and if he's making a distinction between worshiping beauty on that selfish, superficial kind of level versus, deeper, more transcendent kind of beauty that, I guess he writes about in other themes and in other works. So it's something to think about. I don't know. Any thoughts,
I
Paul?
mean, I just wanted to
Good.
say, it seems like one reason Picture of Dorian Gray is so popular even today is that, I mean, isn't this the current world we live in? Like everybody is seduced by this like gospel of pleasure and youth and
Oh,
like,
absolutely. Yeah, it's
looking
very,
good. And I
very
mean, we
relevant.
could
Yeah.
talk about Instagram and just like if all you're chasing is beauty without any morals, then that's just going to take away your soul. And I think that,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely what we've been talking about this whole podcast. I know I just jumped in. Paul, you should say something. Sorry.
Oh, uh, no, you're right. Though, Instagram filters can make you look like young forever, and the place you live is
Exactly.
on
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think there's another aspect is like um this don't you think that like part of like the creepiness of Dorian Gray is like, or part of like the sin of it or whatever, is that they're twisting like your his like his crimes don't like end up on him, you know.
Well, not directly, right? In
I,
many cases, they end up
I'm
hurting other people and leading to their demise.
Yeah, but and so it's the painting that has like blood on its hands, for example, after his
Yeah,
brother.
it's a painting that accumulates all the,
Yeah,
the
or like that smear of like licentiousness or whatever when he takes his
yeah,
medicine, you know.
But it
Sublime.
catches up with him ultimately. I
Yeah,
think like
ultimately.
immediately it does it, but like his servants find him on the floor, like withered and all that stuff, and it's
But that was because his own consciousness led him to try to destroy the painting, as he thought that was the root of all his problems. At first he tried to like atone in other ways, but those ways were still superficial and selfish, and they're
Yeah,
just
because
about alleviating his own, kind of guilt and stuff. But it didn't really
yeah,
work.
yeah, that must have been torment to realize that. I mean, like, where do you go from there?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I'm only
That
trying to
there's only
make
one
myself feel
place,
better.
really.
yeah, you can't kill your guilt. It's very hard to just you know.
I'm a
Yep.
little bit curious to know when Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was written.
That'd be
That's a good
interesting.
question, actually. Hold on.
We could probably look that up. Yeah.
Jamie, can you pull that up on the on the
Yeah,
screen?
Jane. Joe Rogan
I think it was
references.
around the same time, roughly.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is great. It's written by that Scottish author, forgot his name, but it's interesting because Edinburgh as a city itself has like a
Um,
geometric or geographical kind of dimension of the ugly and the pretty. But oh,
oh, it,
Robert Louis
yeah,
Stevenson.
yeah, Robert Lucy, but it did predate this. It was 1886. But
It might have influenced.
yeah,
Right.
so really
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, certainly
interesting.
he would have been familiar with it because Robert Louis Stevenson was famous, right?
Right.
Treasure Island and
Hmm.
yeah.
What a
He
time to
also
be
wrote one
alive.
story that's
Huh.
a little bit like Christmas Carol. It's not nearly as like hit you over the head with its kind of moral. Uh, it's not as well known, but it's called the Young King.
The Young King.
Um, yeah, the Young King. And I misplaced my vape. Did you steal it?
Yeah, it's right here.
How'd you get that? Um,
Don't worry
but
about it.
he it like sort of it's like it's on the eve of his coronation, and he's uh taken by this kind of spirit to see like where everything that goes into his coronation is coming from. So he sees like the weavers who are like their hands are all crooked and from their efforts
Hmm.
like weaving all this beautiful like cloth for his robe. Or they go to this galley where these galley slaves are being like whipped and forced to to dive for pearls for his crown, and go to like a silver mine in South America where all these like tons of people are just and like this plague and like dying of overwork and just all of this enormous human suffering that goes to uh, his coronation.
Yeah.
And when he awakens from all that, he instead of he um, foregoes the robe and the crown and scepter. Instead, he takes up this sort of like like a shepherd's roker or like a staff that spontaneously like you know blossoms out of the end when he takes it up, and he puts on this wreath that causes this like halo, and that's what he you know takes to this procession to the church for his coronation, where he appears to be a kind of angel.
Hey, we're back after a momentary disruption. Jamie got us online,
Minor
and
technical difficulties.
minor technical difficulties. But we want to wrap this up. And Andre said maybe a good segue to do this that Paul may enjoy hearing as well is I was looking up Oscar Wilde, and it turns out that he was influenced by a tutor in Oxford called Walter Pater, and I
I'm
know him.
familiar.
And well, maybe this will even you'll know what I might be getting to, but Walter Pater influenced Proust, Marcel Proust, James Joyce, W.B. Yeats, Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot, Wallace Stevens, and also I've read about him like in Harold Bloom and things like that. Um, so I think there's something beautiful to be said about like the critical method of like Renaissance and Platonic eternal beauty and things like that, which you've already touched on. Um, so I just thought that was kind of a beautiful thing to bring up.
Yeah, I believe a Walter Pater quote is uh, when he wrote about it's called like History of the Art of the Renaissance or something. What's it?
Yes, yes.
Right.
He talks about people the sublime quality of like great art and just kind of uh, beauty for its sort of its own sake, and that to burn ever with that hard jewel like flame is success in life.
Oh, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have
I
another
like
quote that
that.
I
I
pulled
like that a
up.
lot.
Yeah, could you repeat that, Paul?
To burn ever with that hard jewel like flame is success in life.
That's beautiful.
Uh,
I have another one on Epicureanism. Theory, hypothesis, beliefs depend a great deal on temperament. They are, so to speak, mere equivalents of temperament. So, interesting
Mm-hmm.
thought.
Sure.
Yeah.
But after many digressions, I believe we can't leave your audience hanging because before we got into ideal husband and importance of being earnest, we just touched on the fact that they were still, um, you know, playing sold out shows when the wages of Wilde's double life came due. Because uh, his lover, Lord Alfred Douglas, who was also a poet, um, whose nickname was Bosie. His father was the wicked Marquis de Queensberry, which is actually where we get Queensberry rules for boxing. He invented those. Um, but
He was a big boxer, right? Like a
yeah.
very like masculine man.
Oh, he
Maybe
was
that's where
all
the
boxing, like running, just and when he came to suspect Wilde's relationship with Lord Alfred Douglas, who absolutely hated his father, by the way, and just this passionate mutual enmity. He sent Wilde a bouquet of rotten vegetables, and a card calling him a posing sodomite. Of course, he meant sodomite, but since he was more into boxing than you know studying, he spelled it wrong.
Misspelled it.
Yeah, he was um, not a educated guy.
That's funny.
Um, and if we are to believe Wilde, from the long letter he wrote to Lord Alfred Douglas from prison, then it was entirely Lord Alfred Douglas's idea for Wilde to then sue the Marquis of Queensberry, for libel, and that through this way, uh, he's like, I'm going to ruin my father and get all of this money for us, Um, and so they go to trial, and if we are to believe Wilde from his letter, of course he was dragging his feet, and thinking it was a bad idea, but just giving into it. And he pressed charges for libel, and then in his defense, Queensberry called as witnesses, these male prostitutes, for example, and others who could very convincingly argue that this was not libel because it was true. And uh, when and that's when the Crown, decided to prosecute Wilde itself for gross indecency. And in the course of this, Wilde had to pay all of Queensberry's legal fees, so he lost his all of his like curiosity collection and his library, and like his wardrobe and like everything of value that he had. And this was a giant scandal. It was tons of attention, and his wife took the children, and they never saw him again.
Damn.
And he was found guilty and sentenced to.
did we lose Paul?
You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
I'm sorry about my camera.
The camera's fine. Although we might need to put a seizure warning on the video because of the blinking light. But
Oh,
nah, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, it's good.
He was found guilty and sentenced to 3 years of hard labor in Reading jail.
And then it all went downhill from there, right?
Well, I mean, De Profundis, which is this long letter he wrote to Bosie, which was published after his death, is, I think, probably his, very sadly, it's maybe his crowning achievement.
Wow.
Because he didn't, he was obviously miserable, but like a caged bird, managed to just transform his circumstances into such incredible beauty. And a great example of that is my favorite passage from the whole thing, if you guys want to hear it.
Sure, go for it.
Please.
Society, as we have constituted it, will have no place for me, has none to offer. But nature, whose sweet rains fall on unjust and just alike, will have clefts in the rocks where I may hide, and secret valleys in whose silence I may weep undisturbed. She will hang the night with stars so that I may walk abroad in the darkness without stumbling, and send the wind over my footprints so that none may track me to my hurt. She will cleanse me in great waters, and with bitter herbs make me whole.
De profundis.
Indeed.
It's
Indeed.
interesting that he says
Um,
bitter herbs will make him whole. Why do you think that is bitter herbs?
Well, I think that he felt like he was being um what's the word for like he was being scourged. Uh he was being
Persecuted?
purified uh through like the suffering of prison. Like he wasn't proud of the life that he had been living before that, and he was humiliated when he was outed by this trial. Um and he saw this as redemptive,
mm, that makes sense.
you know. It's funny. There is a some people read this as and in some ways it is sort of this giant guilt trip, uh, where he's just blaming everything on Bosie, um, and and just uh, well, and there's a great passage that speaks to that too. Oh, and there's a Lord Alfred Douglas Society, and they refute this account of it being all sort of his fault too. And they read this as just being this Wilde being bitter, um, and taking it out on Bosie in this letter. Um, but this is one passage that kind of speaks to that. Love does not traffic in a marketplace, nor use a huckster's scales. Its joy, like the joy of the intellect, is to feel itself alive. The aim of love is to love, no more and no less. You were my enemy, such an enemy as no man ever had. I had given you all my life, and to gratify the lowest and most contemptible of all human passions, hatred and vanity and greed, you had thrown it away. In less than 3 years, you had entirely ruined me in every point of view. For my sake, there was nothing for me to do but to love you. And there are earlier parts in this letter where he describes how he would like give like a nice pair of clothes to Bosie, and then he would like pawn them for money to go out drinking with his other friends. And he was like constantly hitting up Wilde for money, and then like not wanting him around, but constantly like billing him for all of these sort of this fun that he was having. Um,
Huh.
and Wilde does come across as a bit of a doormat as far as that goes. I never would have put up with that.
It's just
It's interesting. I
egregious.
really like that quote that you brought up. Love does not traffic in a marketplace. And kind of what you're explaining to me kind of sounds like that classic stages of grief, where you have like the Kubler-Ross, paradigm of like denial and anger and bargaining depression. It's like love does not traffic in a marketplace. That's rejecting bargaining. And
Mm-hmm.
that Kubler-Ross, you kind of go up and down through these stages. Um, you were my enemy. You had entirely ruined me. I mean, I think a lot of lovers or can sympathize with that, who have gone through that. It's kind of this weird paradox where love is like intertwined with injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's cool where he says, "For my own sake, there was nothing for me to do but to love you." And I don't think that's like acceptance per se, but it's sort of like this self-annihilating devotion that I find
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. And it's almost like kind of a Christian embrace of an enemy. You're supposed to turn the other cheek. You're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to love them.
Mm,
And I just think, man, that is like, wow, this is like incredible trauma bonding. You know what we're doing? It's yeah, that's some entanglement of emotions right there. I love that.
Also, it occurred to me too that uh, this is like love. It's like entirely for my sake that I love you. Like love for the point of love is to love. It's love for love's sake, which parallels his his aesthetic philosophy of art being for art's sake. you know,
I mean, but the thing is, like, he's showing that he loves that his grief of this lover is loving someone that ruins you. I guess it's kind of cathartic. Maybe it's like the only thing left is to love, but I guess I see what you're saying. It like embodies that aesthetic belief that he
it's just an
had.
interesting echo of
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I
Um,
mean,
and to your point, also, I mean, there's too much in it to really get into a big, like deep reading of this. I would highly recommend it to you guys and all of your listeners. It's great essay. But in it's very explicit in its Christianity too. Um,
Wait, so was he a devout Christian?
well,
Or,
he was. What do you mean by devout?
well, I guess
what does
that's a
anyone mean?
yeah,
You know,
that's
what is devotion?
I mean, he in De Profundis, like he uh um draws on the example of Christ and like the parables, but then he also refers to the Gospels as prose poems.
hmm.
So he's it's for him, it's sort of it might be more aesthetic than kind of a dogmatic thing, you know.
That tracks. Yeah, that's definitely on brand with him. Yeah.
And also, like for example, I mean, just to call back to like Salome, for example, if you didn't know that was from the Bible, you might not. It's just so weird that you might not. I mean, that doesn't come across as a um, devout uh, work, does it?
Salome?
Yeah, Salome, Salome.
Well,
I
she's
mean,
the one who requested the head of John the Baptist, right? That was
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
He
Yeah.
was called Jocannon in the play, but the play is just like the guards are like talking about the moon and there's like very little like religion in it.
right, which is
It's
kind of
and
cool.
it's just the like the belly dancing, I guess, or the dance that
Yep, yep.
and then cutting off his head and then cutting off her head at the very end.
That's
There's
right.
a really great silent movie version of Salome, by the way, where the set and costumes are based on the illustrations that were done for the play by Aubrey
By
Beardsley.
Aubrey Beardsley. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say those are famous. He did a lot
yeah.
for Oscar Wilde. Yeah.
I've actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I just looked this up. Richard Strauss's libretto for the opera Salome is actually the German translation of Oscar Wilde, and I didn't
Oh,
realize.
whoa.
I've seen
Oh,
this several
really?
times growing up,
Interesting.
and it's a fantastic opera. They usually have like a paper mache head of John the Baptist that they're carrying around.
Cool.
Um, Kind of a good memory as a kid. I was confused whether it was a real head or not, and then I deducted that it
We
wasn't.
would be.
Yeah, I was five or something. But anyway, um, wow, that's full circle right there. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, guys, um,
Any other re parting remarks or conclusions or anything?
I hope that we have shown the listeners that Oscar Wilde is really worth reading. He's a lot. There's a lot more to him than many people think. Uh, his both his ideas and his works are impressive and valuable, and um, I cherish very much and can speak to people in our time just as much as his own.
And they're still very relevant to this day, as we've discussed pretty much, more so than ever with like
Mm-hmm.
with the direction things are going. in terms of people pursuing, these sort of vain things that, he basically spoke about in his works.
Hmm.
So it's-
And not
Yeah,
to mention
no, you go, Paul. I
just
apologize. I apologize.
also just the also the kind of cultural stagnation we see, in media and movies
Mm,
and one Marvel film
absolutely.
after another. It's people find this formula to try to make money, and just these fandoms and this culture industry was a lot of what he was revolting against, I think, in his sense of what an artist should be. And
Yeah.
he could
Yeah, it seems like he really understands the human condition, like you guys are alluding to with like Instagram, people being obsessed with themselves. I mean, people having double lives, the devotion that we have to beauty. I mean, it takes such a big role in our lives from the smallest little, I don't know, office plant that's meant to be aesthetically pleasing to, grand opera. But I mean, it, yeah, the Oscar Wilde is incredible.
Here's a question for you guys. If he lived today instead of, in the late 19th century, how would he view the world? How differently would he act? I mean, especially considering the whole public decency, kind of laws and norms that he supposedly violated, those wouldn't be as much in place to today. How would that impact his work, I wonder? Or was it that
I,
repression of Victorian society that actually fed a lot of his and informed a lot of his work, you think?
I think that's really hard to answer succinctly.
Right.
Uh, you know, uh, I mean, I've heard the argument that he was writing under a censorship regime, so that's why, like, he didn't really have gay characters. It was, he
Right.
wrote these great straight narratives. On the other hand, like, he was trying to appeal to everyone. Um, uh, I would hope that he would remain essentially like unchanged.
Hmm.
Like, I hope that he didn't feel. I hope that he was able to express himself as much as he seems to express himself. And on another level, just quickly, when you think about arabesques, and how, you have a prohibition of representational art, it can actually cause something very beautiful to be there that wouldn't have been there otherwise. Um, the same way, or like meter, when you have metered poetry, uh, it, it can create a kind of beauty that wouldn't be there if it were all so spontaneous.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe you could look at the strictures of his time that way. This is just a thought about that.
So like kind of reading between the lines and there's more
Yeah.
insight you can
I mean,
glean from the structures.
there is something to be said that like beauty and art can come about in a censored regime. Like, I think what you can't be so explicit in Victorian England, but you can sort of play around it and come up with these things that are metaphorical or slightly bring towards it. I was going to say that I think referring to your question, Andre, Wilde would definitely, I think he almost, maybe not predicted, but the era in which he lived sort of predicted us. But like people have like these perfected masks that they wear like on Instagram or social media. It seems like all politics is performance, which is kind of like the ideal husband
Right.
scenario.
Yeah.
And there's like this Dorian Gray narcissism that seems to exist. But I mean, I think ultimately everyone would agree that, compassion and love can sort of redeem our human soul. Um, so it's a weird world we live in, but I think a lot of these dynamics still exist and are just like magnified to such a huge extent that he
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
able to identify them.
I'd like to, I mean, so I agree that to add to the point about being able to produce beautiful art and meaningful work even in a censored society, in some cases that even makes it more interesting and beautiful because of those constraints. Like as you've seen during the Soviet Union or other repressive regimes, they produce some very interesting works of art in terms of both writing and cinema.
Mm-hmm.
So. Um, but yeah, I'd like to think that his message would be largely unchanged, over time, and would it certainly stood the test of time. So
That's very true.
yeah. And with that, if you guys if nothing else, we'll probably look to wrapping
Don't
it up.
forget to like, comment, and subscribe, please. And tell us to bring back Paul to this podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, guys. I had a great time.
Yeah,
It
you've
was
been a
wonderful to
great
talk to
guest.
you.
Very fascinating insight. And we'd love to have you again.
I look
Thank you.
forward to it.
All
Thank
right.
you, Paul.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Till
Have a
next
good night.
time, guys. So long.
See ya.
An omnibus across the bridge crawls like a yellow butterfly, and here or there a passerby flits like a little restless midge. Big barges full of yellow hay are moored along the shadowy wharf, and like a yellow silken scarf a thick fog hangs upon the quay. The autumn leaves begin to fade and flutter from the temple elms, and at my feet the pale green Thames lies like a rod of